Hey guys, welcome or welcome back again to my channel. I am Grace, and in today's video I'll be showing you how to make this really beautiful Clara dress that has the keyhole detailing design, puffy sleeves, as well as the patchwork detail. So without any further ado, let's just jump right into the video for today. And as usual, I like to start off by writing the list of items needed to creating this project. So starting off with the front bodice, you're going to attach the F2 and F3 together by placing right sides facing each other, pinning them down in place and sewing it down using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So when I'm pinning, I like to start from the top first before I pin all the way down to the bottom of the front bodice. When pinning a patchwork fabric or pinning a patchwork design, especially when the design is a bit wiggly like this, you need to take your time when doing that, or you could make a mistake. So this was just sped up, but I trust me when I say that when I was doing this, I took my time in pinning it in place. So after pinning everything down, this is what you're going to have. This is what the front will look like, and you're just going to sew from one edge to the other edge. And sewing down, I'm using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So for the front skirt panel, you're going to place right sides together, pretty much the same thing you did for the front bodice, placing right sides together, pinning it down and sewing using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So you're going to want to repeat the same step to the back skirt panel, but before you do that, what you're going to do is to place right sides together of for the front and the back skirt panel like so, just to make sure that it's properly aligned so you don't end up making a mistake and sewing it wrongly. So once you are certain that everything looks good, what you're going to do is to place SB1 with SB3, having right sides together and pinning it down in place, and repeat the same step to SB2 and SB4. So now we're going to attach the facing to the front bodice by placing right sides together, pinning it down like so and sewing it down using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So after sewing from one edge to the other, the next step is to top stitch the lining, to top stitch the facing to prevent it from, coming out. After top stitching it, you iron it down in place. So now what you'd want to do is to attach F1 to the rest of the front bodice. So you're going to first of all pin the main fabric to the front bodice, having right sides facing each other like you can see me do. And when doing that, you're going to want to align the notches you already created for the top right there, on the top right there. So after pinning the main fabric down in place, the next step is to pin the lining to the bodice, having the right side of the lining with the wrong side of the main bodice facing each other. And you're just going to just pin it with the rest of the fabrics. And you repeat the same step to the other side of the front bodice. So after pinning everything down, this is what you'll have. You're just going to sew it down. So after sewing it down, the next step is to top stitch the lining. So for this project right here, I used the same fabric as the main fabric and the lining for the F1 pattern. So now the next step is to sew the side dart. So what you're going to do is to take your pattern paper and just align it and place it on top of the front bodice and just trace out the dart lines. You're going to fold it into 2 equal parts, having right sides together. You pin it down in place and you sew your darts. When sewing any dart, I like to backstitch when I start, and when I get to the pointy edge of the dart, I just sew and pull out like so. Then I create knots. So doing it this way prevents it from having a pointy edge at the bust point there. So after doing that, you're just going to iron it down in place. Now we're going to start off by creating our back bodice darts. So what I'm going to do is to cut out the paper I do not need to create my darts, right, like so. So I'm going to place my pattern paper onto my fabric, having the wrong side and tracing out the dart line on the wrong side of the back bodice, and I'll repeat the same step to the other side of the back bodice. After doing that, I'm just going to pin the darts, pin the fabric like so in place with the darts aligning on each side, and this is what you'll have. And the next step is to just sew your back darts in place. I'm pretty much doing the same step you did when you sewed your front bodice side darts. So now for the pockets, we're going to first of all place the inner pocket shelf, to having the right side of the inner pocket shelf and the right side of the front skirt pattern panel in place, and you're going to pin it down like so. And after doing that, what you're going to do is to measure 7 inches down from there, and you're going to sew and stop at that 7-inch mark. Don't forget to backstitch your work. After doing that, the next step is to top stitch the pockets fabric. After doing that, the next step is to just create a notch right there, and you'll see why you would need that in a bit. So now we're going to attach the outer pocket shelf to the rest of the fabric. So this is the reason why you needed to create that notch, to have the edge come out like so, because without creating the notch it isn't going to look this way. So after doing that, you're just going to place the right side of the outer pocket shelf to the right side of the inner pocket shelf, and you're going to pin everything down in place like so before you sew it round. So after you're done pinning everything down in place, what you're going to do is you're going to start sewing from the waistline down to where the pin stops out. So pretty much I'm going to show you right now down to where the arrow points at. That's where you're going to stop sewing. So I'm just trying to look at it and see how it's going to look like before I proceed to the whole sewing process. So you're going to sew like this and stop right there, okay? So make sure you're only sewing the pocket fabric and not the skirt panel itself. So after doing that, this is what you'll have, and the next step is to pin both the pocket fabric and the skirt panel down in place. The reason why you'd want to pin it is to prevent it from moving around when you do the rest of the next step. So now we're going to attach the front bodice to the front skirt panel, and in order for you to do that, you're going to have right sides facing each other. You're going to pin them down in place like so, then you sew it down using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So you're also going to repeat the same step to the back bodice and back skirt panel, and you're going to place the right sides of the back bodice and the back skirt panel in place, pin it down, and sew it using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So the next step is to attach the front and the back dress pieces together. So in order for you to do that, you're going to place the right sides of the front dress piece and the back dress piece together, and you're going to first of all pin the shoulder line or the shoulder seams together in place. Then you pin the side seams down in place as well. After pinning everything down in place, the next step is to first of all sew the shoulder seams down using a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and your next step is to sew the side seams down using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And make sure when you're sewing the side seams down, you also sew the the pockets along with it. So the next step is the sleeves. What you'd want to do is to place the front and the back pieces together, having right sides facing each other like so. You pin the side seams together like so, and you sew it down using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. After doing that, the next step is to serge or overlock the edge of the center opening right there before folding it inwards, having wrong sides facing each other, and pinning it down in place using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and sew it down in place. This is just to have a neater look at the opening of the sleeves right there, and you're going to repeat the same step to the other side of the sleeves. After doing that, you're going to create a basting or a gathering stitch to the hem of the sleeves. Then after doing that, you're going to fold your ribbon curves into two to find the center, and you create notches there. After doing that, you're going to go inwards from the center by 4 inches, and you create notches over there, and you repeat the same step to the other side of the ribbon curves. So I used 4 inches because that's the measurement for my wrist, so you could take the measurement for your wrist and use the appropriate measurements. Okay, so after doing that, you're going to fold the ribbon curves into 2 equal parts, having right sides facing each other, and you're going to sew it down like so. When you get to the edge right there, you're just going to pivot the fabric like so, and you keep on sewing till you get to the notch you created, and you're going to skip from that notch to the other notch like you can see in the video. Then you continue sewing till you get to the end. After doing that, you're just going to trim off the excess fabric, then turn this right sides out. So in order for me to turn this right sides out, I decided to use my loop turner, but you could also use a pencil or anything with a sharp edge. So after doing that, the next step is to gather the hem of the sleeves to the actual measurements you need. So in my own case, I needed to gather it to 4 inches on both sides, so which would be a total of 8 inches. So don't forget to take the measurements after you're done gathering everything. And once I was okay with it, what I did was to place the wrong side of the sleeves to the right side of one side of the ribbon cuff, and just pin it down in place, then sew it down using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now after sewing that down, you're going to just cover up the rough edges by folding the other edge of the ribbon cuff inwards to just cover it up, and pin it down before sewing everything down in place. So I'm going to start out by sewing from one edge of the ribbon cuff fabric to the other edge. After doing that, the next step is to create a gathering or a basting stitch to the top of the sleeves. Then after doing that, you're just going to attach that to the armhole, and for this I feel like you would need to place this on your mannequin to just make your work easier. So that's why I had to place it on my mannequin before attaching and gathering the puffy sleeves to the armhole itself. So after gathering the first side, I'm going to just repeat the same step to the other side. So that's pretty much after gathering the front sleeve, I'm going to just gather the back sleeve as well. And after I'm done gathering everything like so, I'm going to repeat the same step to the other side of the dress. So you're going to want to infuse an interfacing to the wrong side of the collar and repeat the same step to the second collar fabric. So after doing that, this is what you'll have. So what you're going to do is to fold one into two equal parts like so. Create a notch at the bottom of the collar to find the center. After doing that, you're going to go inwards by half an inch and create a notch as well, and repeat the same step to the second collar piece. Okay, so now you're going to want to attach that collar to the neckline of the dress. So now you're going to want to pin one side of the neckline to the notch created half an inch away from the center, and pin the other side of the neckline to the second notch created half an inch away from the center. After pinning that, the next step is to pin the rest of the collar to the neckline like so, and you sew it down using a half an inch seam allowance. I'll recommend you trying on your dress after sewing it down just to be sure that everything looks good and you don't necessarily have to go back and undo your stitches because of a mistake. Okay, so after sewing down the first collar piece to the neckline, the next step is to attach your zip to your dress. So what you're going to do is to place right sides of your zip to the right side of the dress like so. And as what I like to do is I like to create a basting stitch or a loose stitch rather than pinning it down, because this way it prevents the zip from actually moving around while I sew. So after sewing the zip to the dress, the next step is to close the opening at the back of the dress. And as usual, I'll also like to just create a loose stitch or a basting stitch till I get to the hem of the dress. So you could also use a pin if you do not want to have to go through the whole process of using a loose stitch like I do, but I just prefer this method. So now you're going to want to attach the second collar piece to the previously sewn collar piece by having right sides facing each other and just pinning it down in place like so. So now when you get to the end of the collar piece that's at the edge right here, you're going to see what I'm talking about in a minute. So when you get there, you go upwards by half an inch and just mark it, and that's where you're going to stop sewing at and start sewing at. So repeat the same step to the other side of the collar piece, and you sew all round like so. After doing that, you're just going to trim off any excess fabric or zip fabric that you do not need anymore. After doing that, I'm just going to create clipping notches there to just make it easier to turn around. So after doing that, you're going to turn the fabric right sides out, and this is what you'll have. So now you're just going to pretty much fold the rough edge inwards like so, iron your fabric down in place, then top stitch at the front of the front side of your collar. So for the last and final step for this project right here, you're going to hem your dress by folding it inwards using a half an inch seam allowance, then sew it down in place. So after doing everything, this is what you'll have. And if you're interested in getting this pattern, the link is usually in the description box below, and there is currently a sale going on my website. So yeah, thanks so much, and I hope to see you all in the next video next year. Bye.